5 years ago, my parents died in a car accident. My memory of that night is fractured at best. The last thing I remember was my dad shouting and my mom's crying out my name as she tried to turn to me. The car was too fast. It crashed into us head on, or so the police told me later. It hit my head against the window pretty hard. The doctor told me that it was a blow to the head, in addition to the trauma of the event's occurrence. I had suffered from amnesia, and it was entirely possible that I would never remember all of what had happened that night. My mother died of an impact, or so they said. My father survived almost 2 weeks. The swelling in his brain caused a hemorrhage, and he passed. They said it was a miracle that before I had come out mostly unharmed, during the first week after Dad, I was passed around from family friend to family friend. I guess no one knew to help me, and so it was easier to send me off to someone else. The second week, my uncle came down from his lower Manhattan to move into my parents' home. My uncle's name was Mo. He was my mom's brother and my dad's best friend. He was always pretty close. He coached my little league team with my dad. Always my partner in crime and helping my family out whenever we started having problems. My Uncle Mo had always known how to make everything better. It was part, and I didn't see a reason now that it would be any different. The hope I had felt, however, was not meant to last. When I woke up on the 12th day after the car accident, my Uncle Mo was sitting on the table smoking. I had never seen him smoke before. He sat me down and explained to me that my father had passed in the night. I broke down completely, and he hugged me for what seemed like a long time. That hug felt like the only stable thing left in the world, and to me, it was. Mo would be the only thing that got me through it all. My mom, my dad were buried in side-by-side graves, a single tombstone. The service was a grueling affair. I cried the whole way through. From the small Catholic chapel to the cemetery outside St. Louis. I had been willed to Mo, and so were most of my parents' possessions until I turned 18. After a short custody case with the state, my family ultimately triumphed over foster care. I would live under his care from then on. This may seem like the most confusing and trying time of my life, but the worst was yet to come. 5 years later, I was walking home from school, which was only 7 blocks from our apartment. My mind wandered to plans that night. As I turned the corner, flashing white lights were in front of our apartment building. I broke into a run, my curiosity spiked. As I arrived in front of my building, I stared at the doors, waiting for the paramedics to come out with Mrs. Adams, the friendly neighborhood cat lady, or Mr. Smith, the custodian. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect who it was that came out that door. My Uncle Mo was strapped to the gurney with a troop of EMTs. "Check his vitals," one said. One put a blue-gloved hand to my uncle's neck and his ear above his mouth. "Patient is not breathing again. We'll start rescue breaths once we get him inside loaded." I pushed my way through the crowd and looked down at Mo's lifeless body. One of the EMTs grabbed me. "Stay back," he said, as he pulled me away from the ambulance. "That's my uncle! That's my uncle! Let me through!" I said. I tried to pull away. I wanted was to help him, bring him back. The EMT relaxed his grip on my torso. He looked back. "We've got family. What's your name, kid?" He turned to me. "It's Jack. My name is Jack," I told him. "Okay, Jack. Just chill out, and you can go. It's okay." I relaxed as best I could as he allowed me through. My eyes immediately wandered, and before I knew it, I was in the ambulance, and I sat in the corner, like a child. I tried everything they could to revive Mo. Eventually they succeeded. Mo was stabilized. When his eyes shot open, they darted back and forth all around the unfamiliar surroundings. He found himself in. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air. His eyes fell upon me, and a wave of relief seemed to wash through his entire body. For the first time in years, he completely choked up. I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat was tight with emotion. Mo reached his hand out to me. I clasped with both hands. We held hands, and that's all I can remember of the trip. His calluses rubbed into my skin. After all those years of high-rise construction, he was a pillar of strength. Even in this moment, when he lay toppled on his back, he comforted me. Some would say he needed me for once, but I know the truth. He'd always been strong. When we arrived at the hospital, Mo was whisked away. I was left in a large waiting room. I sat in the corner chair. The television in the corner was on a news station. Probably ignored it. I looked at the magazines beside me and eventually fell asleep in the chair. Though it was not the most comfortable place, pure exhaustion, and he is a talented negotiator, I was out in a matter of moments. When I woke, there was a man standing over me in a doctor's coat. Jack, wake up, he said. I'm Dr. Neal. I looked at his outstretched hand and took it. I just came to inform you that your uncle has just suffered a very serious heart attack. However, he is awake for now, and you can talk to him. I try to not get too emotional, but we didn't want him to throw another one. Our hands fell apart, and I let the news sink in. Thank you, I said, realizing that this was the doctor. He was short. Where is he? I asked. I looked toward the door where they had taken him. Dr. Neal said, follow me, and he turned and headed in the direction, other than that set of doors, to another. They moved your uncle to the ICU for the moment. I followed through the door, which led down a long hallway of doors on either side, all of it in oppressive white, the smell of antiseptic mixed with clean, and just a hint of death in the air. Well, what I imagined death would smell like. I had been in far too many hospitals in my life, and the people I loved never seemed to come out of them all right. The only constant, the only guarantee in a hospital was a unique scent. The memory of my parents hit me, and I paused for a second. You okay, Jack? Yeah, I said, looking up teary-eyed. I followed him, passing more rooms than I could count. I feel the souls crying out. I feel my throat tighten, close up. I walk silently as the Reaper. Dr. Neal led me through the labyrinth of hallways to a door. He's in there, Dr. Neal said. Go ahead. I have to attend to other patients. He walked away briskly. I turned back to the door, then opened it and looked inside. Mo lay, his eyes shut, hooked up to as many machines that I couldn't discern one from the other. Mo's eyes were closed in a solemn sleep. I approached the bed, barely breathing for fear of disturbing him. I got to his bedside and looked down at the man who had become but a husk of my uncle. He was my dad for all intents and purposes. The man held me when I was at my lowest point, was reduced to a pale, ghostly image. To be entirely honest, I think I felt as bad on the inside as he looked on the outside. Not a comforting thought, as I had to be there for him at this time, or at least I had to try to be. It was the very least I could do for the man who had raised me, got me through my parents' passing. Come here, please. As I walk closer, Mo reaches a hand. I take it. Mine. I'm dying, he says. Matter-of-factly, as if he's telling me the sky is blue. The doctors say I have days at most. I know I don't look it, but I'm scared to die. He took a deep breath, squeezed my hand. There's so much to say, so much left to do. It's my job to be there for you, and now I'm breaking my last promise I made to my brother-in-law. No, not yet. You're here now. You'll be here for me. I felt my eyes start to burn, and the worst thoughts running through my head. Something of them sad, others that made me angry, and building up, threatening to overwhelm me. You okay? You're okay. You've got to be here. You're talking. They are saying stupid shit. I say, tears at the edge of flowing freely. I turned my head so he couldn't see me. Watch your mouth, he said. I'm dying. That's why the doctor went to get you. It wasn't just a heart attack. My whole body's shutting down, and I want to know. No, I needed to tell you. He was pleading for my attention. I turned my head back, and his eyes finally letting loose a torrent of tears behind them. Is there something, anything they can do? There must be some experimental drug or procedure. The words came out of me like a water from a spring. I was lost in my little fictional television world. It would have taken one hell of a miracle. He paused for a minute. I died, Jack. I was gone, but they brought me back. I'm already a talking corpse, and now I'm breaking, slowly hooked up to all this crap, full of drugs, with names I can't pronounce, and I know in my soul that your mother's calling to me. Your dad, too. His voice rose, filling the room like thunder. Then he just stopped, breathing hard. I'm in pain, Jack. My insides feel like acid. Every muscle hurts to move. I didn't understand. I couldn't grasp the concept in my head. It was just too much, too fast. And I didn't want to believe it. My sobs came forth in great lurches in my gut. I slowly regained control of myself, determined to be a true man and not show emotion. A few tears still fell without my permission. Mo had just two requests to me, which was to be the biggest request ever. Jack, come here. I need you to promise me something. He looked down at me with the saddest eyes I had ever seen. What could I do? I went right up to him. He reached his left hand over to mine, grasping it in a vice-like grip. Before your father died, he gave me something. It was supposed to be given to you when you were ready. I know you're not. And I have failed to help you like I should, but you are stronger than you know. You have become my one true accomplishment. My fingers started to burn as he spoke, and the pain was speeding to my hand. It was... I can't be there for you now. And this is when you'll need it most. For that, I am sorry. Now, though, there is no time, and it is always meant to be your burden to bear. The burning is becoming painful, and I'm lost in control. I look down and see wisps of green smoke dancing around my hand and arm. My eyes went wide with shock. I was petrified as I watched the smoke dissipate in tendrils and vanish from existence. Mo's grip suddenly slipped and his hand fell. When I finally regained muscle control, I twisted my hand, inspecting it. Etched into my skin was like a tattoo, sharp. It was a symbol of a sickle over a crescent moon. It was so clean and right there on my forearm. Then came Moan's last request. Stay with me. came his barely audible voice. I don't want to be alone when the time comes. So I sat, and I sat. The hours passed quickly, and I picked at my new tattoo. I was fascinated with the thing. Everything was revival. It did come, and Mo passed. The doctors and nurses came in running and stood back till they called the time. 3:54 a.m. And Mo was dead. Everything around me became a blur. I was asked more questions than I felt ready to answer. Are you okay? From every nameless doctor and nurse, driving me crazy, but every time I responded with a simple, yeah, I think so. And it worked. The people left me alone, with nods. Not a single one believed me, but it seemed to get the leave me alone without being rude. As the sun began to poke up over the city, I was exposed. Every nerve was screaming. I fall asleep, never to wake. On the top of that, every 10 minutes or so, I had coffee thrust into my hands. This caused me to not only have to become best friends with the restroom, but I felt physically sick from the overdose of caffeine and emotion. This made it a simple decision to go home when Dr. Neal suggested it. A cab was called, and I was on my way to an empty home that would never truly feel like a home again. It felt odd walking into the door of an apartment building. I checked the mailbox to find most keys connected to my dad's old Kennedy half-dollar keychain. Connected a note. This was left in the door. I hope Mo gets better. Written in Mrs. Smith's script. I thrust the key into my pocket, emotions threatening to break again. I opened the door to the black room. I flipped the light and see a familiar setting. Changed profoundly. What used to be happy seems veiled by the situation. I go to the one place in the house that I was not allowed to have access to. I open the high cabinet where I see 3 bottles at different points of consumption. I took the closest one down, labeled Devil's Cut. I pull the top of the bottle off and inhale the pungent odor. It burns my nose. Right there should have told me it was not a good plan. But I've never drank before, and if there was ever a time, now would be that time. I tipped the bottle into my lips, filling my mouth with the fiery liquid. I tried to swallow, but it burned, and the flavor got to me, and I gasped and rasped, coughing. The contents of my mouth was on the floor. Needless to say, drinking away my sorrow was out of the question. Or ever, most likely. I went a few cupboards over and shuffled some boxes till I found a box of Lucky Charms that was nearly full. I poured a large bowl, going to the fridge and filled the bowl with milk. I went to sit on the worn couch, flickering through the channels on the TV. I didn't care what was on. I just had to think. The day had been so long and stressful that I had no idea what Mo had done to me. The thing on my arm didn't rub off. It didn't feel like anything was there till I was thinking about it. He said it was for my dad, but I couldn't fathom how being in anything this crazy. But I thought the same thing about Mo. I beat myself up for not waking Mo to ask him a question in my head. I was truly on my own, and I had no clue what to do. I was only 18 and just a few months. I couldn't get a job in the city, not a good one at any event. I sat and separating marshmallows from the boring tan counterparts, contemplating life. What does the state do with this situation? Would I go to foster care or be left on my own? I decided to finish eating or go somewhere, anywhere. I shoved the soggy contents of my meal down my throat and walked to the door, locking it behind me. As I exited the building, my eyes were assaulted by the light. It was almost directly overhead. I walked down the sidewalk, not waiting to think or feel, and I just kept till I hit a busy street. I waited at the crosswalk. The light changed. I barely registered that, and I was on Fifth Avenue. I made the decision to go to Central Park. I walked past what seemed like everyone in the city, all of them moving in different directions, not giving care for anyone other than themselves. The city passed slowly, buildings towering overhead. To the front of me opened up, to the right. There was something so beautiful about the serenity of nature in the middle of such a large city. It was that will take your breath away. I entered the park, taking the path to the right. My left was a large pond, which was surprisingly clean. I felt so alone. It was like that moment I just stopped, sat on a bench, closing my eyes. I relaxed for the first time in 24 hours, and I sat there till I had lost complete track of time. Then I felt something brush against my arm. I jumped and looked over at a man in a jet black suit, close-cropped hair. He sat beside me, stiffly, then relaxed. "This is one of my favorite spots in the city," the man said, like I should have known. "It's just so peaceful." A red flag went right up in my head. I wanted to ask who he was, but I was resigned to a polite, "Yeah." I was really hoping that he would just leave me alone after that, but he didn't. "You look like something's wrong, like your whole life just got kicked in the face or something." The man looked at me with concern. Was this really happening? Yeah, something like that," I retorted, not wanting to get up or seem rude. "I'm not an expert, but I feel like I've lost someone close to you." His words were shivered down my spine. My heart was beating fast as I tried to keep my composure. "I did, but I have to go now. Get back before dinner." I went to stand up, lightning quick, but the man's hand came to grab my wrist. "Boy, I don't think it's time for dinner. I think it's more time to take a walk. You understand?" The man eyed me with true malice. "What the hell?" I screamed. I pulled my arm away, looking for anyone to help. Then I realized there was no less than 6 other men spaced out around the area. My heart sank. Who are you people? And what do you fucking want with me? I was tensed, ready for anything. The man rolled his head, and with an audible popping noise, "We are part of a government branch, and I think you realize by now that your uncle was not quite as he appeared to be." The man spoke with a forceful authority that made the hairs on my neck stand up. I wanted to bolt like a rabbit, but I looked around for a way out. The man pulled something out of his pocket. I needed no more invitation. I ran for my life. I veered to the right to avoid the two men and headed straight into the jungle gym. I ducked my way under the equipment, trying to think of a place to hide. I made my way out of the patch, and I saw my salvation. The North Central Park 110 Street subway terminal on Malcolm Street. My lungs were on fire, but I couldn't stop. Looking back, for only a split second, the men were right on me. I sprinted through the intersection, praying no car would hit me. I landed on the opposite sidewalk and dashed for the stairs, swinging around the handrail, gliding down the steps. I hit the bottom and realized my mistake. The turnstiles, and an ominous line preventing my passing. I had no time. I wasted none of it, thinking I did the first thing in a long line. jumped over the turnstile. I landed on the other side, pushing my way against the departing crowd, trying to catch a ride out of there. It was not to be. I watched my hope departing as I entered the platform. Dread filled my veins as I stopped trying to think of a way out. I made my way to a corner and sat down, trying to be lost in the crowd. My heart rate was through the roof, and my breath was ragged. Then I saw one of the men in the crowd scanning for me. He pushed his way through the crowd as another train arrived, full of people. I thought getting on the car would be my salvation, for I'd be across the park in minutes and free from these people. I stood to start in my careful trek over to the open doors. Then there was a hand on my shoulder. I spun face to face with one of the men, taller than the last, but still very strong. His hand, in his other hand, was a taser with an arcing current moving across the electrodes. Are you going to make this easy or hard on yourself? I froze, not knowing what to do or say, as he brought the motion up to Then with a flash of metal, the man's head was hit with a crowbar. The man fell to the ground as he tried, as his palm hit his face on the tile. The next flash of metal was accompanied by a scream of pain. The crowbar had connected with the man's knees, which was at an odd angle. The man collapsed in a heap, revealing my savior, a small man in jeans and a skull hoodie that zipped over his face. This new man reached out to me with a hand, and I took it, if only to get pulled along the wall to a small service door on the wall. He ripped it open and pushed me through, screaming, "Run!" He wasn't a man at all. The voice was female, but I still listened to it. I raced down the small corridor, ducking to avoid the pipes that crisscrossed the narrow hall. "Turn right." The order was barked from behind me. I turned into a similar corridor that had a small door about 100 yards down. I heard rather than saw the men behind us. I rebounded my efforts, sprinting, trying to get out to the door. I got to the door with the girl right on my heel, not noticing the lip that stuck out almost 6 inches off the ground. My foot caught, and I went sprawling onto the ground, followed by the girl, landing hard. I turned to face our attackers, and as they neared the door, I reached out with some vain attempt to stop them, to impede their motion. Nothing happened. Then, with a lurching pull in my stomach, the door gave a great screech and slammed shut. "What the fuck?" the girl exclaimed. She stood and started turning, with me in hot pursuit. I lost track of all the twists and turns we went through. Then, without warning, it all opened up into a large room. It was another station, although this one was covered in shacks of all shapes and sizes. Then the woman's voice came to me again. It was an abandoned subway tunnel with people of all ages and races. Skull-faced unzipped her hoodie. "What the hell were you doing, and who the hell were those men?" "Well, I retorted smartly. "You owe me an explanation, or I swear to God I'm going to kill you right here. I'll tell you everything once you tell me where I am and who you are." She fumes for my demands, but complies. "Well, the people call this the underground. It's where orphans and runaways go to find shelter and protection. Other people are here to avoid the law or their own personal demons. Most people just don't know it exists. Everyone here has some reason for it. Everyone who knows about it protects the secret with their lives. We take care of each other here." While she was talking, I got a chance to look at her. Underneath the dirt and the dust, which covered everything around her, she was beautiful. She had dark hair, green eyes, and a face that would fit in any fashion show. Well, now I've kept up my part. It's your turn. I'm Ember, by the way. Well, I came to live in New York when I was 8. I began my story. When I'd finished, Ember kept walking me towards the corner of the station, and we entered a hovel that was quite plush. She sat down on a pile of rags that had the distinct impression of her body. As I finished my story, there was a brief moment of silence. Then, she asked the question I've been asking myself all day. So, do you have, magic, or what? I honestly don't know, I said, realizing for the first time just how desperate my situation had become. Ember looked at me with honest interest. So, where are you going from here? I looked back at her with the smallest hint of a smile. Forward.